Hi, everyone, and welcome to the North Central Region Aging Network's webinar series. This is the first in our professional development series, and we're so happy that you're choosing to watch this webinar today. Today's webinar is going to be called Tips for Enhancing Your Elevator Pitch. But before we get to that, I just want to share a little bit about the North Central Region Aging Network. So, the North Central Region Aging Network, or NCRAN as we call ourselves, is a collaborative of extension professionals from across the North Central region. We have representation from 11 of the 12 states and their extension systems. So we're excited to bring together our knowledge and resources and ideas to help improve the extension work that's being done across the region in relation to aging. We have a brand new website that you might want to be aware of, and I'm guessing that many of you are joining this webinar via that website, so hopefully you found it, but ncran.org, ncran.org is our website. And on there, you will find a plethora of resources, and I'm talking fully scripted extension curricula related to aging, as well as outside sources and sites that can really provide a lot of research and evidence-based information to extension professionals in the field of aging. We also have a blog and a contact us page where if you ever have questions or ideas, you can feel free to get in touch with us at any time. We also have this webinar series. So twice a month, we're going to be offering webinars. The first Friday of the month at 10 a.m. Central Time is our Gerontology 101 series. And there you're going to learn about all things aging, whether it's healthy aging in relationships or your declining senses as you age. If it's aging related, we're going to be talking about it. On the third Friday of the month at 10 a.m. Central Time, we're going to be offering a professional development series that is really intended for all extension professionals, regardless of your area of focus. And today is the first one in that webinar series, and I'll be talking about tips for enhancing your elevator pitch. Again, I'm Erin Yelland from Kansas State University, and we're so glad that you are joining us and joining the North Central Region Aging Network and helping to provide some professional development. So just to get started, if my slide will advance here. Okay, so what is the elevator pitch? This is the thing that we all have probably heard about before. So this is the idea that you're going to magically get into an elevator with a miraculous person who's going to fund all of your ideas or give extension billions of dollars of funding, or they're going to give your county $5,000 that you need to pay for some idea that you have, and then you're going to get in the elevator for 30 seconds and pitch this idea, and by the end of it, you're going to be the guys on the right and you're going to have a deal. So that is sort of the concept of this elevator pitch, that if you were to run into somebody in the dreaded elevator and have a conversation, would you know what to say, and would you know what to pitch to them or tell them about yourself? Many times we're really good at this, and other times it can be a struggle. And the extension elevator pitch is a lot different than the sales pitches that most of the resources that you can find on the internet are going to be talking about. So I'm going to really get into the extension side of this and how we can improve our extension elevator pitch. Now, of course, this doesn't naturally happen in an elevator. So the type of pitch that I'm going to be talking about is maybe a little more realistic for some of us. For example, how many of you have ever been interviewed by the press? So many of us, I'm sure, raising our hands and saying, yeah, I've talked to the local TV station, the radio station, or even the newspaper. Maybe you've been interviewed for a podcast or a Facebook Live video. If you've done something that is similar to that, many of us have been in this situation, and we need to have our quick pitch or our elevator pitch in our back pocket and ready to go so that we can effectively and efficiently say exactly what we want to say. But I've had experience that sometimes those people from the press will ask us more than, tell me about the program that you're doing today, or tell me what we're doing out in these crops, or tell me what we're doing at the local senior citizen center. they might ask more difficult questions, such as, what do you do? So what is extension? And they might say things like, huh, I've never heard of that. How many of you have been in that situation before? And I'm guessing that many of us have. We've all been faced with these questions, and whether or not we're prepared to answer them is really up to us. So one of the sort of experiences that got me kick-started on this topic was when I was presenting an extension program with some extension agents out in a rural county in Kansas. And the press had sort of unexpectedly showed up. We didn't know that they were going to be there, but we were sure excited that they were there to tell our story. So they started off by sort of watching the end of our program, and then afterwards, they went and talked to the participants and said, hey, what did you get out of this? What did you learn? Why did you come here tonight? And at the end, they came over to the group of extension professionals that were standing there that had really hosted the evening. And they said, so who are you and what do you do? And the woman that sort of took on answering those questions, I was a little befuddled by her maybe lack of preparation to answer those questions. And to be honest, she was struggling with really clearly articulating who she was and what we do and what extension was. And that's okay. We've all been there, right? Like no one can blame her for stumbling. But thankfully, you know, the rest of us were there and we all pitched in and sort of helped to create the story together. And I think that we were able to get the message of extension across. But that really showed me that, wow, we need to be giving all of our extension professionals the tips and tricks that they need to be able to tell that story on the fly or on the get-go. You know, if they were to actually get into an elevator, are they prepared to share their story and tell their story? The second place where I have seen the extension elevator speech really come in handy is at this place, our nation's capital. So last year, actually earlier this year it was, I had the opportunity to go to the Public Issues Leadership Development Conference, also known as PILD, that is offered in Washington, D.C. And a big part of that conference is really they prepare you to go and talk with your legislators about the work of extension. So you go to the conference for a couple of days, and then on the third day are your Hill visits, and that's your time to shine. And it was really evident to me that when we had really well prepared elevator speeches or those pitches, those quick pitches, that we were able to really get more of a reaction and more of a conversation from the staffers that we met with, but as well as those senators and those individuals themselves. So here I am visiting the nation's capital, and you can see here I am outside of Senator Pat Roberts' office, and we had the opportunity to go and speak with one of his staffers. Here I am outside of the House office building, but most importantly, here I am in Senator Jerry Moran's office with his prized buffalo head, which I just thought was really cool and clearly had to take a selfie with. But hey, here I am, and this was a real life experience where I needed to have my elevator pitch ready to go, and I wanted to make sure that it was going to be as good and as effective as possible. So we've all been there, right? So now I've told you a little bit about the elevator pitch. So it's really this succinct and effective pitch that we want to give about who we are or who our organization is. So in the sales world, they call it a succinct and a persuasive sales pitch. That's really what the Harvard Business School is telling us in their resources about an elevator pitch, that it's really a sales pitch, and you're selling your vision and your mission, your purpose, your value. So some of the guidelines that I have seen, and I don't want this presentation to be a whole lot about the nitty-gritty of elevator pitches. I want you to take away some ideas that you can think of more broadly and be able to then craft your own elevator pitch. So some of the things that I've heard that I think are a little bit helpful: just to begin to frame this conversation, is that you do want it to be short. You want it to be about 30 seconds long. Now, of course, you can have your back pocket elevator pitch that's 30 seconds ready to go, but then also maybe have a longer one as well. So that if your senator, for instance, has longer in the day than what they originally anticipated, you can tell that longer story. But we really want to make sure that we have that short and concise, quick and dirty one ready to go. So what is 30 seconds, or how is that made up? So some people will tell you that that's between 80 and 90 words, or 8 to 10 sentences. But I'm hoping that these three sort of guidelines give you a starting place, or maybe a goal that you can sort of aim your elevator speech to be. But the elevator speech for extension is more than just a sales pitch. So you can see up on your screen here about the dreaded best kept secret. And I know our Associate Director for K-State Research and Extension here in Kansas, this is one of his biggest pet peeves, is hearing that extension is the best kept secret. So what sort of elevator pitch or short little statement can we construct to help stop that? To help people realize that we aren't the best kept secret, and to make people more aware of who we are and what we do. So really what the purpose of me telling you this is that in comparison to a sales pitch and many of the tips and tricks that you'll see online related to elevator pitches, the elevator pitch for extension might be a little bit different because people may not know who we are. They may think that they are the best kept secret. So sometimes it may be very important for your extension elevator pitch to not only cover your sales pitch or what you're trying to get, maybe that grant that you're aiming for in your local county, but it might also have to be bigger than that and include who we are, what we do, and with whom we do it. Oftentimes we know that extension does not work alone and we don't work in a vacuum, so that might be a place where we can talk about that. And how we make a difference and for whom, who is our target audience that we really make a difference for, and then how do we do it? So these are things that a typical business elevator pitch or sales pitch may not necessarily include, but that extension may need to include in theirs, particularly when we have people who aren't as aware of what extension does as, of course, what we are. So let's think. This is the part where I want you to maybe pause the webinar or stop and write some ideas down, or even just pause it and think in your own head how you would answer this question. So our marketing specialist for K-State Research and Extension actually asked these three questions to extension professionals during our annual conference. And she was really hoping to get us to think about who we are and how we talk about ourselves. And I think that this is incredibly relevant to the elevator pitch sort of conversation. So when you see an old friend from high school, or maybe you just are meeting a new neighbor and they ask, what do you do? They ask you about your job. What do you say? Many of us have that canned response that we might give that sort of beats around the bush of people don't understand extension, so I'm going to tell them this. But think honestly, what do you say to people when they ask about your job? The next question is, when you refer to the organization for which you work, what do you say? And this is an important question because many of us fall maybe under two umbrellas, or it can be perceived that we fall under two umbrellas. We have the umbrella of the university, but then we also have the umbrella of the extension system. Perhaps we fall under the umbrella of the College of Agriculture, such as the way that Kansas State Research and Extension is set up. So we are housed within the university, within the College of Agriculture, and then within K-State Research and Extension. So how do you communicate that to people? And when does it matter that you communicate the specific umbrellas that you fall under? Then similarly, how do you describe Extension's relationship to the university? So many people in this instance might say that Extension is the outreach arm of the university. Some other people might go into the history of the land grant and say that we are the land grant university in our state. So how do you approach this? And think about, is there a better way that you could approach these answers with different audiences that you're speaking with? So some of my tips to a successful pitch. The first one is that we need to understand who we are professionally and then where we fit within our own organizations. So these answers, or the answer to this question, might help guide your elevator pitch or that statement that you're going to make to those stakeholders or to the media or to whomever you're talking with. Answering this question and understanding who you are and where you fit can help craft a better elevator pitch for Extension. And this really feeds into our identity. So I mentioned earlier that our K-State marketing or K-State Research and Extension marketing specialist was asking us some questions. And really she was trying to get down to our identity and who we identify as. Now, sometimes our identity can be a little confusing. So this is me. And here's the question of who am I? So if I were to provide you the long answer that perhaps someone in my university would like me to give, it is this. I am an assistant professor, an extension specialist, an adult development and aging, in the School of Family Studies and Human Services, in the College of Human Ecology, at Kansas State University, and K-State Research and Extension. Now, I can hardly even say that in one breath. I am Dr. Erin Yelland, and I'm an assistant professor and extension specialist in adult development and aging in the School of Family Studies and Human Services in the College of Human Ecology at Kansas State University and K-State Research and Extension. Right? How many of us have an equally as long sort of job title or where you fit? But if you're thinking about going and meeting with your state senator and saying all of that, they're going to get lost. And are they going to care that you are saying all of these things? How are you going to identify yourself and express your identity in a way that is clear and concise and that is meaningful? And really being meaningful is what I'd really like for you to consider the most. Is it going to matter to the person that you're telling that you fall within all of these different categories? So how can you communicate your identity clearly while making all of your bosses happy, but also being understandable and relatable to whoever you're talking about? So at the end of the day, we're left with this question mark of who we are and where our identity fits. So again, I think a first step to having a successful pitch is understanding who you are professionally and where you fit within those organizations. A second tip is to understand your mission and your vision, so yours personally, but then also that of your organizations. So now, while a mission and a vision statement won't necessarily make it into your 30-second, 8 to 10 sentences elevator pitch per se, it may make it into your longer explanation of what you do and why you do it. But you may also be able to sneak in a flavor of your mission and vision statement into your elevator pitch. So I think it's important to sit back and think about these broader philosophical questions when you're crafting the perfect elevator pitch. So what is your mission and vision, and what is that of your organizations? So first, it might be important to understand the difference between a mission and a vision. So a mission is who you are. So for example, if you're talking from the organizational level, a mission would be who we are, and a vision would be where we want to go. So some questions that you might be able to answer in a mission statement are, what do you do? Who do you serve? And how do you serve them? So who we are as an organization. But you may also have an organizational agenda as well as a personal agenda in your own county, district, or region. So what do you perceive to be your personal professional mission? That might also feed into your elevator pitch. And then the vision of what do you want to become? So again, an organizational mission would be who we are, and then the vision would be and who we want to become. And your personal mission and vision is along the same lines. So who are you and who do you want to become? Or what types of change do you want to create in your community? So some vision questions that you might ask yourself are, what are your hopes and dreams? What problems are you trying to solve for the greater good? And who and what are we inspiring to change? Answering these questions can help you to craft your personal vision, or maybe your county, district, or region's vision, or maybe even your organizational vision as well. But understanding both, again, who you are professionally and where you fit in your organizations, but then your personal professional and your organizational mission and vision can really help build a good, solid foundation for an effective elevator pitch. The next tip that I'm going to give you is to understand your value. And understanding your value can be a good place to hook people in. So what is your local value to the local constituents in your county, district, or region? How are you valuable to them? Think of a big, powerful statement. I'm valuable because I am decreasing the rates of chronic disease in my community. I'm valuable because I am transitioning crops to more sustainable options. I'm totally making that up. I am not an agriculture person, so it could be totally wrong. But come up with some sort of big value statement that can really look at the broader level of that community. How are you of value to your community? And understanding that and being able to articulate it can really create one heck of a hook of an introduction to your elevator pitch. Elevator pitch, which is a combination of speech and pitch. So elevator pitch it is, but come up with your good hook. And your value can be a really good way to articulate that. So thinking of, in your content or in your programming area, what does the general public value? So this might also help you create that value statement, or maybe even decide which value statement you're going to use. If you're talking to a public health official in the state, for example, you might really take that health focus. If you're talking to a community development or an investor who's really integrated into the community and who has donated a lot of money, you might change that value statement. So think about who you're talking with and what value statement you could best use to hook them in to your elevator pitch. So again, understand who you are professionally and where you fit within your organization. Understand your mission and vision and that of your organization too, and understand your value, because that can be a really good hook. But lastly, I just want to share some logistics with you. So my intention of this brief webinar is not to tell you exactly how you can lay out an elevator pitch, but rather is to give you some ideas or some things to think about that can help enhance your elevator pitch and how we can communicate to those necessary stakeholders to tell our story and to secure the necessary resources that we need to thrive. So, some logistical tips, some tips and tricks that I have found either on the internet or just in my own practice. But the first one is to start with a bang. Don't be afraid to get their attention. An individual who writes for the Harvard Business Review actually suggested that you can even start off with a joke. You can start off with something that really grabs someone's attention and is going to pull them into a conversation with you. And with this comment, I'm going to jump down to the last point, and that is be authentic. If you are not a joking person and you have a really dry sense of humor, maybe opening up with a joke isn't for you. Maybe instead we really want to make a really strong and impactful statement about the value that extension plays to your community. That's where I think many of us extension professionals can make our mark at the beginning of our elevator pitch, is by really making a strong statement of the value. So start with a bang by really articulating our value. Or if you want to put your own flavor on it, start with a joke, start with a question, start with something that's going to hook people in, start with a bang. The next tip that was also provided by the Harvard Business Review was asking a problem question. So I'm just throwing out a random example and putting in one of my favorite countries that I've never been to, but I imagine that I would love, is Tahiti. So are you aware of how high our child obesity rates have gotten in Tahiti? So asking a question can actually help you to build rapport with an individual. So imagine you walk into your state senator's office and you say to them, are you aware of how high our child obesity rates have gotten here in Riley County, Kansas? Well, let me tell you what we are doing at K-State Research and Extension to help tackle that problem. And then I would like to hear from you some ideas that you have that we can implement to help achieve our vision of reducing overall childhood obesity rates. Starting with a question can help build that rapport, but also build your elevator pitch into more of a conversation as well. So someone might answer this question, are you aware of the childhood obesity rates? With, yeah, I am. And they get into that. They get into your conversation. Or they might say, no, I'm not. Tell me more. So with both of those scenarios, you can see how you can immediately jump into a conversation of your mission and your vision and your elevator pitch. But you might also see that someone can answer this question by saying yes, and then they tell you their whole life story about how they are so worried about this and what they're doing in their family, and that's okay too. So it may not be expected that during your elevator pitch, someone else tells you a story, but that is okay because you're building rapport with that individual and you're going to be able to understand more of their viewpoints and then build on those and be able to more effectively tell our story. The next tip is to really have more of a curiosity statement. So think of how you might use a curiosity statement in your elevator pitch. So a curiosity statement is one where you really want to provide them some information and then leave them asking a question. So I might tell them something, but then I want them to want to know more. So that's a curiosity statement. And the Harvard Business Review suggests that you can create a curiosity statement by using one of these templates. So I help or teach blank to blank so they can blank. So I help teach and then describe your audience, to and the skill that you're teaching them, or the initiative that you are implementing in that community. I help teach our community leaders to implement this initiative so that they can reduce childhood obesity rates in our county. Then they might come back and say, well, how are you doing that? So by having this curiosity statement and providing that value and impact and making a strong statement, but still leaving room for a conversation can be a really beneficial tip or technique for you to use. But I'm going to go back to that last one. So when you're crafting your elevator pitch, when you're answering some of the questions that I've talked with you about today, I want you to always remember that you need to be authentic. Anybody and everybody can see straight through an individual who is faking it or lying through their teeth. We need to be authentic and honest and pure. And if you are the type that can hook people in with a joke or with a really outstanding fact, do it. If you are the type that needs to have more of a prepared statement, but you're going to still start off with a bang in your own unique way, do it. No matter what you say in your elevator pitch, I always encourage you to be authentic. So, some of the tips that I provided you today, and I'm just going to flip back here, is to understand who you are professionally and where you fit within your organization. Understand your mission and vision and that of your organization too, and understand your value. And by looking at these 3 broad questions, that can help us to better understand ourselves. And when we better understand ourselves, we're going to be able to better explain and convey our elevator speeches to our stakeholders and the people who really need to hear our message the most. So think about these questions and then think about these logistic steps as well. And then I want you to really work on crafting your elevator pitch. So what are you going to say if a key stakeholder gets in the elevator with you? Or what are you going to say the next time the media unexpectedly shows up to your program and they ask, who are you and what is extension? Or what are you going to say to your state legislators when you go to the Public Issues Leadership Development Conference in Washington, D.C.? What are you going to say, and are you going to be prepared to say it? And I want you to be able to answer that first question and say, yes, I'm prepared, because a good response is a prepared response. So, last, I'm going to end up with some typical pitches. And if this was a live webinar, I might ask you to say, how would you make this pitch different? Or do you think it's great? So I took these next 2 pitches from extension websites in the United States, of course, and added in Tahiti instead of their local extension name as to sort of blind their pitch that they are offering to their extension professionals. So this was directly off a website that was from an employee resources page. And the typical pitch that they would like their professionals to give is this. Tahiti Extension Family and Consumer Sciences improves lives by bringing research-based information to the community through hands-on interactions. We provide information for families and communities to improve decision-making skills that impact their lives. How could this help your need? Now I want you to stop right now, pause the webinar and ask yourself, what do I remember from that? And list off what you remember. Avert your eyes from the screen and see, what do you remember? So if you remembered a whole lot of things, maybe this is a great elevator pitch. If you didn't remember a lot of what they said, or it didn't make a big impact or didn't make that big bang for you, think of how you could make this pitch better. Then the next one. I'm Sam Beachalot. Glad to meet you. I'm a pulse crop breeder in the Tahiti Plant Sciences Department. Pulse crops, such as lentils, play an important role in Tahiti's agriculture because of their ability to fix nitrogen in the soil and develop healthy benefits of eating pulse crops. My job is to develop new varieties that will grow well in Tahiti, which will improve our country's economy. So again, stop the webinar and ask yourself, what do you remember from this pitch? So if you remembered a lot from this pitch, wonderful. Maybe this is a great pitch. If you didn't remember a lot, how could they improve? Did these do these pitches have that bang that we talked about? Are they hooking you in? Are they giving you small and memorable tidbits of information that you're going to be able to take back and remember when you're writing the next farm bill? Do these statements make an impact, and how can we make them better? But also think about how can you transition these sorts of statements to fit to different audiences. Again, remember, whether it's your media or your legislators or a stakeholder or just someone that you went to high school with and asks, what in the heck do you do? Being able to articulate that can be a strong value for extension. So, are you ready? I hope that you can take some of the ideas that I've brought to you today, some of those big philosophical questions, and really help narrow them down so that you can really craft the perfect elevator pitch that is going to explain who you are and what you do and the value that you have every single day on individuals and communities' lives. So again, I am Erin Yelland from Kansas State University, representing the North Central Region Aging Network, and I encourage you to visit our website, ncran.org. And if you have any questions or comments, you can contact me and find my contact information on the NCRAN website. I hope you all have a great day, and I hope you are ready to share your extension elevator pitch.